Hello and welcome back to American Classic Tour TV. I'm your host JD Conroy, and on today's episode, we're going to tour 10 of America's most charming small towns. Let's get right into our list. Hood River is a small town of just under 8,000 people in northern Oregon. And if I had to describe Hood River in one phrase, I would say that it is perfectly situated. The town of Hood River sits at the confluence of the Columbia River and the Hood River in the heart of the Columbia River Gorge, which, by the way, might be my favorite region in the country to visit. The Columbia River Gorge is just breathtaking. I mean, I feel like this is one of the most overlooked parts of America. It's just not enough people know how beautiful this region is. What I love most about Hood River is the diversity of its scenery. Let me explain what I mean by this. Well, on the one hand, Hood River's home to beautiful mountain scenery. It sits in the Cascade Mountain Range, and it's surrounded by tall mountains, most notably the dramatic Mount Hood. And of course, Hood River is also home to beautiful river scenery. It's got these big, beautiful green river bluffs. But the type of scenery that I appreciate most about Hood River, and that Hood River, this area of the country probably has it better than anywhere else in the country, is its agricultural scenery. Maybe we'd call this agri-scenery. Beautiful scenes of vineyards, orchards, farms. They're just breathtaking. And there's something especially beautiful about agricultural scenery. It's kind of where natural beauty and human ingenuity meet. And you kind of see man and nature in harmony. That's what I think is just so beautiful about some of these vineyards and orchards in this region. Hood River is home to the famous Fruit Loop, a 35-mile scenic drive past gorgeous pear, cherry, apple, nectarine, and peach orchards. You'll find farm stands, wineries, breweries, lavender farms, and great jams, jellies, pies, wines, beer, and more as you travel along this famous 35-mile strip. Here are some places you'll want to visit as you tour Hood River's Fruit Loop. Stop by the Panorama Point Overlook. From this point, you'll get a view of Mount Hood and Mount Adams, and you'll also get a feel for the great variety of agriculture that defines this region. Hood River is rapidly becoming known for its outstanding hard cider, and it's no wonder with all the great local fruit that's available. Check out Foxtail Cider for some of the area's finest cider. A little farther up the road, visit Odell, where you can visit the Hood River Lavender Farm, where you'll see spectacular lavender fields set against the beautiful backdrop of mountains. Back up Highway 35, stop at Packers Orchards and Bakery for fruits in season, jams, jellies, preserves, pies, and pie fillings, ice creams, and more delicious daily baked goods. So as you can tell, the Fruit Loop is really a unique and amazing attraction to visit. But the Fruit Loop was actually not Hood River's first major attraction. This area experienced its first tourism boom after being discovered as a site for world-class windsurfing and kiteboarding. Hood River also has some of the best kayaking, mountain biking, downhill, and Nordic skiing areas in the United States. Located in western North Dakota, roughly 30 miles east of the Montana border, lies the small town of Medora. And when I say small, folks, I mean it. Medora has a population of just 129 people. If I were to describe Medora in one phrase, I would say it is Old Western. This small town is a sort of emblem of the countless other small towns that have popped up on the American frontier over our nation's history. Frontier towns are a symbol of the greater American psyche. They represent manifest destiny, rugged independence, adventure, opportunity, risk. In short, they represent the American dream. In this way, Medora as a frontier town is sort of the last of a dying breed. While many other frontier towns have been developed into modern cities or have grown in population to become big towns, Medora has remained small, preserving its old Western feel. Medora was founded in 1883 along the transcontinental rail line of the Northern Pacific Railway by French nobleman Marquis de Moore, who named the city after his wife, Medora von Hoffman. De Moore wanted to ship refrigerated meat to Chicago via the railroad. He built a meat packing plant for this purpose and a house named the Chateau de Moore, which is a museum that you can visit today to learn about Medora's founding. Fast forward 20 years to April 1903. President Teddy Roosevelt visited Medora on a presidential tour of the western United States. Now, Roosevelt was familiar with the area because he had visited and invested in ranches near Medora in the 1880s. When he returned to Medora on his presidential tour in 1903, most of the Badlands residents turned out to greet him on whistle stop. Roosevelt later remembered the day saying, "The entire population of the Badlands, down to the smallest baby, had gathered to meet me. They all felt I was their man, their old friend. And even if they had been hostile to me in the old days when we were divided by the sinister bickering and jealousies and hatreds of all frontier communities, they now firmly believe they had always been my staunch friends and admirers. I shook hands with them all. I only regretted that I could not spend 3 hours with them." So folks, Teddy Roosevelt is a big deal in this part of the country. So much so that the state of North Dakota named its only national park after him. Theodore Roosevelt National Park, located right next to Medora, is the only national park named directly after a single person. This park lies where the Great Plains meet the rugged Badlands. It is home to magnificent scenery and an abundance of wildlife, including bison, pronghorn, prairie dogs, and wild horses. Yep, folks, you heard me right. Teddy Roosevelt National Park is in fact home to some wild horses. There's something so beautiful about seeing a wild horse run free. It's also an incredibly unique thing to see. And I remember when I first learned about the wild horses at Teddy Roosevelt National Park, I found their origin story so fascinating. I wanted to share some of the history of these horses with you today. Disappearing from North America around 10,000 years ago, the horse survived on the European and Asian continents. Horses were brought back to North America by the Spanish in the 1500s. Over time, some of these horses strayed from domestication into the wild, and these stray horses became known as Mustangs. From the 1600s to the mid-1800s, Mustangs ranged throughout the Great Plains in vast herds, sometimes numbering in the thousands. Reintroduction of horses changed the social and environmental landscape of the Great Plains, most notably for the Plains Indians. Their acquisition of the horse changed their culture from a pedestrian hunter-gatherers to mounted buffalo hunters and warriors. During the modern ranching era, feral horses came to be regarded as a nuisance. Cattlemen worked to exterminate these animals throughout the West. In the 1950s and 60s, though, efforts to preserve feral horses began. In 1971, the Wild Free-Roaming Horses and Burros Act mandated the protection of these animals as, quote, a national heritage species. Today, the wild horses are managed and actively preserved at Theodore Roosevelt National Park. It is one of the few national parks where visitors can observe free-roaming horses. There's more to Medora than just a national park, though. You're going to want to take in two of America's great small-town traditions: the famous pitchfork steak fondue cowboy cookout, where delicious steaks are cooked on pitchforks over open fires, and the Medora musical, performed live and outside every night. The show is dedicated to President Teddy Roosevelt's time in the Badlands and the spirit of the Old West. It's really an amazing show. During your visit to Medora, stay at the famous Rough Riders Hotel located in the heart of downtown Medora. This iconic hotel is where luxury meets Western charm. A quick interruption here. Folks, if you're enjoying this video and if you love to learn about American history, culture, geography, art, architecture, cuisine, and most importantly, if you love to travel, you are definitely in the right place, and you're definitely gonna wanna hit the red subscribe button just below the bottom right-hand corner of this video, and make sure you ring the bell to get notifications of when we come out with our latest episodes. Okay, back to our list. Stowe lies in a broad, fertile valley between Mount Mansfield and other peaks of the Green Mountains to the west and the Worcester Range to the east. This ideal location has made Stowe a favorite among skiers. It is nicknamed the ski capital of the East. Stowe boasts that it is the perfect place to experience winter. I read this blurb on the GoStowe.com website, and I think it sums up why you should consider going to Stowe for a winter retreat. With snow-covered mountains and quiet fireside retreats, winter in Stowe is winter at its peak. Discover legendary terrain, iconic trails, and an idyllic New England village that makes winter days warm and cozy. With fine attention to detail and an ambiance of alpine elegance, Stowe is the perfect place to connect, relax, and rekindle the magic that is winter. And while Stowe is a great winter destination, in my humble opinion, winter is not even the best time of year to visit this small town in the mountains. I would say that the best season to visit Stowe is autumn. In fact, if I were to describe Stowe in one phrase, I would say it is autumn paradise. Now, New England is known internationally for its colorful fall foliage. And Stowe, a quintessential New England village sitting among Vermont's highest mountain peaks, is perhaps the best place in all of New England to enjoy a fall getaway. Here's some experiences you're going to want to enjoy during your visit to Stowe. Immerse yourself in the seas of foliage on one of Stowe's many scenic hiking trails. Take a drive on one of Stowe's hidden back roads. If you love craft beer, you'll love Stowe. Vermont actually has more craft breweries per capita than any other state, and Stowe is no exception. It's home to some of the best craft breweries in Vermont, including Stowe Cider, Idle Time Brewing Co., and the Von Trapp Brewery and Beer Hall. Speaking of the Von Trapps, does that name sound familiar? Have you ever seen The Sound of Music? The 1965 smash hit musical drama was about the Von Trapps, an Austrian family that survives the loss of their homeland to the Nazis in World War II. In the early 1940s, the Von Trapp family actually toured the United States as the Trapp Family Singers before eventually settling in Stowe, Vermont, on an enchanted farm with sweeping mountain vistas reminiscent of their beloved Austria. In the summer of 1950, they began welcoming guests to a rustic 27-room family lodge. They've been hosting guests ever since. The Trapp Family Lodge is a unique mountain resort featuring Austrian-inspired architecture and European-style accommodation. Sitka is located on Alaska's west coast on what is known as the Alexander Archipelago, a 300-mile strip of islands off of mainland Alaska. These islands are actually the tops of submerged coastal mountains that rise steeply from the Pacific Ocean. Deep channels and fjords separate the islands and cut them off from the mainland. These fjords create dramatic, unforgettable scenery. There are over 1,100 islands in the Alexander Archipelago. The small town of Sitka sits on Baranof and Chichagof Islands. And if I were to describe Sitka in one word, I would say it is wild. This small town with a population of just over 8,000 people is surrounded by rainforest, which is home to coastal brown bears and bald eagles. Abundant marine wildlife like humpback whales, sea lions, and sea otters. And it is a world-class fishing hotspot home to halibut, lingcod, and king salmon. Douglas fir, Sitka spruce, white cedar, and hemlock dominate the mountainsides. Sitka sits near Mount Edgecombe, a 3,200-foot dormant stratovolcano, the only dormant volcano in southeastern Alaska. This untamed wilderness makes Sitka a perfect destination for those who love the great outdoors, hikers, fishermen, and campers. Along with its natural beauty, Sitka has a fascinating cultural scene shaped by two primary historical influences, the indigenous Tlingit people and the Russian colonists of the early 1800s. Let's take a brief look at Sitka's unique history. The area known as downtown Sitka today was originally settled by the Tlingit tribe around 10,000 years ago, and the Tlingit lived in this area alone until Russian explorers showed up in 1799. After years of fighting with the Tlingit, the Russian explorers eventually took control of the area following their victory at the Battle of Sitka in 1804, naming their newfound territory New Archangel. Inside this history lies the tale of the fascinating and little-known figure in American history, Bishop Innocent. Now, Bishop Innocent was a Russian Orthodox missionary priest. He came to Alaska in 1823 and tirelessly devoted himself to learning the languages and the dialects of the indigenous peoples. He wrote many of the earliest scholarly works about the native peoples of Alaska, including dictionaries for their languages, for which he devised writing systems. Also, he wrote religious works in and translated parts of the Bible into several of the indigenous languages. He later returned to Russia, where he would become an archbishop, and in 1977, the Russian Orthodox Church officially made Bishop Innocent a saint, calling him, quote, the Apostle to America. Okay, so I know that story of Bishop Innocent might seem like a little bit of an aside, but I find these stories in American history so fascinating. I mean, talk about a clashing of civilizations. You're talking about a Russian missionary priest coming over and learning multiple indigenous languages. It's just like, when I imagine, how did these people get along and how did they communicate? It's just, I wish I could go back in time and see it. I think these are probably some of the most fascinating and formational moments in American history. And also, I think it's interesting because to think of Russian colonists in America, it's not something we typically think about, but we even have, some Russian roots to our American heritage. Reminders of this period of Russian colonization are scattered throughout Sitka today. The most notable of which is probably the Cathedral of St. Michael, which was built in 1848 and kind of has this neat Russian style of architecture. You can visit this cathedral today. So just to wrap up Sitka's very fascinating history, it remained a part of Russia until 1867. In 1867, the Russian government came under financial duress after its defeat in the Crimean War. Trying to raise cash, they sold Alaska to America for, hold on a second, $7.2 million. That's a mere 2 cents per acre. Folks, I would say that was a big win for America. I mean, talk about a bargain. Today, Sitka's economy is based around tourism and commercial fishing. With its unique history and beautiful wilderness, Sitka is a small town that every American should see. Frankenmuth is in central Michigan, about 90 miles northwest of Detroit. This small town with a population of just under 5,000 people overflows with ethnic tradition. In fact, if I were to describe Frankenmuth in one word, I would say it is German. The city's name is a combination of 2 words. Franken represents the province of Franconia in the Kingdom of Bavaria, from which the original settlers came. And the German word Mut means courage. So Frankenmuth means Courage of the Franconians. Sounds pretty epic to me. The area was settled and named by conservative Lutheran immigrants from Franconia and Germany. The group of settlers left Germany in April 1845 and arrived at Castle Garden in New York 7 weeks later. They traveled via canals and the Great Lakes from New York to Detroit and arrived in August of 1845. The settlers made their way to Saginaw and traveled overland to what is now the city of Frankenmuth. The purpose of the settlement was primarily religious. The Lutheran group planned to start a mission among the Native Americans. However, their attempts to convert the local groups failed because most of the Native Americans moved away within a few years. Frankenmuth was to be an exclusively German Lutheran community. The colonists actually pledged to remain loyal to Germany, specifically the Kingdom of Bavaria, and be faithful to the German language. And Germans continued arriving to this colony until the start of the Second World War. Today, the town's German ancestry is visibly apparent through its architecture. The strong influence of Franconian-style architecture can be found throughout the city. Many of the buildings in the downtown, as well as many homes, feature stylistic interpretations of timber frame buildings found in the Franconia region of Germany. This style is marked by the use of timbers in square and X patterns on the outside of buildings, as well as X patterns on windows and doors. Frankenmuth's German tradition can be experienced each year at its annual Oktoberfest, which features food, drink, and music that mimics Germany's signature festival. Frankenmuth is the first Oktoberfest outside of Munich to be sanctioned by the Parliament and City of Munich. In 1996, the mayor of Frankenmuth and German Parliament gave the official proclamation, making Frankenmuth's Oktoberfest, like I said, the first Oktoberfest to operate with the blessing of the original Oktoberfest in Munich. With this proclamation, the event was moved to September to coincide with the opening of the Munich event. Also, for the first time in history, the world-famous Hofbrauhaus Brewery of Munich exported its beer to the United States for the event. While you're at the event, you're definitely going to want to enjoy some Hofbrauhaus beer and some of Bavaria's fine culinary traditions, such as pretzels, spetzels, sauerkraut, bratwurst, and more. While in Frankenmuth, you definitely have to visit Bronner's. This legendary store promotes itself as the world's largest Christmas store, and over 2 million people each year visit Bronner's. It's home to thousands and thousands of Christmas items. I remember the first time I went there, I could not believe just how big the store was. It's really amazing. You're definitely going to want to check it out during your time in Frankenmuth. Located in central Arizona, just outside the Coconino National Forest, sits the picturesque small town of Sedona. If I were to describe Sedona in one phrase, I would say it is red rock country. The main attraction is its red sandstone formations. The formations appear to glow in a brilliant orange or red when illuminated by the rising or setting sun. While Sedona is an incredibly popular tourist destination, it's a pretty small town with a population of just over 10,000 people. Sedona is named after Sedona Schneebly, the wife of the city's first postmaster. And Sedona Schneebly's mother claimed that she just completely made up her daughter's name, Sedona. She just thought it sounded really pretty. So that's ironically how the city got its name. Sedona was inhabited solely by Native Americans until John J. Thompson, the first Anglo settler, moved to the Oak Creek Canyon area in 1876. Today, Oak Creek Canyon has actually become famous for its apple and peach orchards. By historical standards, Sedona is a very young town. In the mid-1950s, Sedona published its first telephone directory, and it only had 155 names on it. And it wasn't until the early 1960s that much of Sedona got electricity for the first time. Sedona began to develop as a tourist destination, vacation home, and retirement center in the 1960s. Most of the development seen today was constructed in the 1980s and 1990s. Today, people visit Sedona for two reasons. First, its stunning red rock formations and wonderful climate lend to great outdoor activities. Take the famous Pink Jeep tour to soak up Sedona's unforgettable scenery. Play golf at one of Sedona's gorgeous golf courses. Visit the nearby Montezuma Castle National Monument. This historic cliff dwelling site was built by Native Americans sometime between 1100 and 1425 AD. The main structure comprises 5 stories and about 45 to 60 rooms. This is one of the best preserved cliff dwellings in North America, due in large part to its placement in a natural alcove that protects it from exposure to erosion. The second reason people visit Sedona is to experience the mysterious, mystical powers of its fabled vortexes. Yep, you heard me right. Many people believe Sedona is the source of a special spiritual force. So you're probably asking, what is a vortex? According to visitsedona.com, Sedona vortexes are thought to be swirling centers of energy that are conducive to healing, meditation, and self-exploration. These are places where the earth seems especially alive with energy. Many people feel inspired, recharged, or uplifted after visiting a vortex. Although all of Sedona is considered to be a vortex, there are specific sites where the energy crackles most intensely. The 4 best known Sedona vortexes are found at Airport Mesa, Cathedral Rock, Bell Rock, and Boynton Canyon, each radiating with its own particular energy. Some are thought to produce energy flowing upward, while at others the energy spirals downward, entering the earth. Don't be surprised to find people doing meditation, yoga, or performing other rituals at vortex sites. Pretty wild, right? You'll have to visit Sedona to see for yourself if you can feel the positive vibes of its vortexes. One more cool thing about Sedona is its history with Hollywood. Sedona played host to dozens of Hollywood productions stretching as far back as 1923. Sedona's Red Rocks were a fixture in major Hollywood productions, including films such as Angel and the Badman, Desert Fury, Blood on the Moon, Johnny Guitar, The Last Wagon, and 3:10 to Yuma. Before we move on to our next small town, I just want to encourage you to do 2 things. First, if you could comment in the comment section below, we want to hear from you. What is your favorite small town in America? And then the second thing is, if you're enjoying this video, please, if you could hit the like button that sits just below this video, that would really help us out. Okay, back to our list. Solvang is a small town of just over 5,000 people located in Santa Barbara County in the scenic Santa Ynez Valley near California's Pacific coast. And if I were to describe Solvang in one word, I would say it is Danish. Let me explain. Between 1850 and 1930, a considerable number of Danes left Denmark, which was suffering from poor economic prospects. According to some estimates, as many as 1 in 10 Danes emigrated from Denmark during this period, mostly to the United States. The most popular destinations for Danish settlers were Utah, Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. In 1910, prominent leaders of the Danish communities of the Midwest, most notably Benedict Nordentoft, journeyed to California seeking to establish a Danish community on the West Coast. They settled on a piece of land in the Santa Ynez Valley, which would later become Solvang. Over the coming years, many Danes living in the Midwest moved out to the new California community, bringing their Danish culture and traditions with them. This Danish culture remains in Solvang to this day. The city is home to several bakeries, restaurants, and merchants offering a taste of Denmark in California. Visit one of my favorite Danish bakeries in Solvang, the Danish Mill Bakery, Solvang Bakery, and Mortenson's Bakery are a few of my favorites to try some delicious Danish rolls, æbleskivers, cream puffs, or kringles. The architecture of many of the facades and buildings in Solvang reflects a traditional Danish style. There is a copy of the famous Little Mermaid statue from Copenhagen, as well as one featuring a bust of the famed Danish fable writer Hans Christian Andersen. A replica of Copenhagen's Round Tower can be seen in the town center. The best time to take in Solvang's Danish heritage is in September during its annual Danish Days. This 3-day event includes 3 parades, Danish folk dancers and musicians performing around town, plus other feature events like the æbleskiver breakfast and a Viking encampment. While in Solvang, you'll want to visit the historic Old Mission Santa Ynez, which was founded in 1804. This was one of the 21 California missions founded by Father Junipero Serra and the Spanish Franciscans during the late 1700s and early 1800s. It has a spectacular view of the Santa Ynez River and the Santa Ynez and San Rafael Mountains. Enjoy a tour and tastings in the Santa Ynez Valley, which is home to more than 120 wineries. Tour Flag is Up Farms California Horse Ranch, home to the internationally renowned horse whisperer Monty Roberts. This ranch has been a starting point for some of the world's most successful performance horses. Located in northern New Mexico lies the little mountain town of Taos. Now, if I were to describe Taos in one phrase, I would say it is a legendary crossroads. From the number of Pueblo tribes native to the area, to the early Spanish colonists and Franciscan missionaries, to mountain men like Kit Carson, for years, people of different races, religions, and cultural backgrounds cross paths right here in Taos. The main attraction in Taos is the historic Taos Pueblo. This is one of my favorite attractions in the entire country. The Taos Pueblo has been occupied for nearly a millennium. Can you believe that? Nearly a millennium. Historians believed it was built sometime between 1000 and 1450 AD, making it one of the oldest continually inhabited structures in America. Over 1,900 Taos Puebloans live within the greater Pueblo area community. Many of the Puebloans have modern homes near their fields and live there in the summer months, only staying at their homes within the main Pueblo during the cooler weather. About 150 people live within the main Pueblo building year-round. As you tour the historic structure, which at certain points is up to 5 stories high, you'll see the Puebloans who live at the Pueblo going about their normal day. I always say the Puebloans had a real knack for real estate. They built their Pueblo in a perfectly situated spot. Nestled in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, near the beautiful tributary valley off the Rio Grande River, the Taos Pueblo is surrounded by breathtaking natural beauty. Now I have a question for you. When you think of New Mexico, what do you imagine the terrain looks like? When most people think of New Mexico, I think that they think of a dry, not a very green terrain, maybe more of a desert-like terrain, something you'd see in Arizona. Well, while southern New Mexico, parts of southern New Mexico are like that, northern New Mexico is actually quite different. It's kind of what you would imagine Colorado looking like. It's covered with alpine trees, white peaked mountain caps. It's really beautiful, and Taos sits right in this sort of setting. Today, Taos is a wonderful place to visit. It is home to world-class ski resorts, relaxing hot springs, hiking, whitewater rafting, and rock climbing. Visit the historic Taos Plaza to enjoy Taos's boutique shops, art galleries, and delicious New Mexican cuisine. Visit the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge. At 650 feet above the Rio Grande, it is the 5th highest bridge in the United States. The bridge has appeared in several films, including Paul, Terminator Salvation, Natural Born Killers, Wild Hogs, and White Sands. And you must visit the San Francisco de Assis Church. Built in the early 1800s by the Spanish, this church is known as the historic Ranchos Church. It was a favorite of famous American artists Georgia O'Keeffe and Ansel Adams. O'Keeffe loved the painting of this church, saying it was, quote, one of the most beautiful buildings left in the United States by the early Spaniards. Sitting on the northwest corner of Illinois along the Galena River, which is one of the many tributaries of the Mississippi River, is the small, charming town of Galena. If I were to describe Galena in one phrase, I would say it is Midwestern charm. This small town of just over 3,000 people has a fascinating history. But before we dive into the history, let's take a look at its very unique geography. Galena is in what is called a driftless zone. Now, a driftless zone is an area that was not covered by glaciers during the most recent ice ages. This area, which includes the far northwestern corner of Illinois, did not experience glaciation, while almost the rest of the entire state was glaciated. Because it escaped glaciation, this area is known for its valleys, bluffs, rolling hills, and exposed rock. So I'm from Chicago. I've lived in the Midwest my entire life. And while the Midwest is a great place, like all places, it has its weaknesses. The Midwest is incredibly flat. It gets very boring, okay? There's no mountains, there's almost no hills or valleys or anything. Galena, however, with its unique geologic history, is an exception to this rule. It is home to beautiful hills, making it one of the most scenic destinations in the Midwest. As I mentioned before, Galena has a fascinating history. In the early 1800s, Galena was an American boom town. It was home to an abundance of the mineral galena, the natural form of lead sulfide and the most important lead ore. This is how the town got its name, Galena, after this mineral. In the early 1800s, Galena boomed as people came to the city to mine for lead. It was also in an important location as it sat in between St. Louis and St. Paul, making it one of the major hubs along the Mississippi River. Now, I love this fact. In the 1830s, Galena's population had actually surpassed Chicago, and many city leaders expected Galena, not Chicago, to become the major city of the Midwest. However, this was not to be. Galena began a long decline in the 1860s as railroads surpassed rivers as the main source of transportation, and the lead industry suffered from falling prices. By the 1880s, Galena no longer held its former prominence. It was surpassed by other river towns like Dubuque, as it was passed over by major railroads for other locations. The Galena River was no longer easily navigable, and floods, including a serious one in 1937, helped ensure the end of Galena's glory days. As the historic preservation movement took hold, Galena became one of the first cities in Illinois to pass a historic preservation ordinance in 1965. And just 4 years later, in 1969, the Galena Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Galena's appearance was primarily influenced by a string of fires that plagued the city during the 1850s. Those fires led the city government to prohibit new construction using wood, resulting in a downtown built mostly of brick and stone. Because of its unique period of architecture, Galena has earned various nicknames. The city has been called the Outdoor Museum of the Victorian Midwest and the town that time forgot. Located on the northeastern Atlantic coast of Florida, about 40 miles south of Jacksonville, is the little town of St. Augustine. If I were to describe St. Augustine in one phrase, I would say that it is Old Spanish. Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon landed in Florida wishing to establish a colony as early as 1521. That's almost 100 years before the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth on the Mayflower. While he never mentioned it in his own writings, it has been said that the purpose of Ponce de Leon's journey was to search for the fabled Fountain of Youth. Today, while you're in St. Augustine, you can visit the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park, a tribute to the spot where it is thought that Ponce de Leon landed in Florida. St. Augustine was formally founded in 1565 by Spanish colonists, making it the oldest city in America. And you can still see the remnants of Spanish colonization today, namely the Castillo de San Marcos, the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States. The fortress was built between 1672 and 1695. Today you can tour this historic fort. So as you can see, St. Augustine is packed with interesting history from this Spanish colonial era. Fast forward a few hundred years and you will enter a second fascinating historical era for St. St. Augustine. I'll call it the Flagler era. In the winter of 1883, St. Augustine would begin to change dramatically. That's because in the winter of 1883, a man by the name of Henry Flagler came to spend his winter in St. Augustine. Henry Flagler was the co-founder with John D. Rockefeller of the Standard Oil Company. He was one of the richest men in the world when he visited St. Augustine, and he fell in love with the city. He found it charming. He wanted to make St. Augustine a winter resort for wealthy Americans from the north. However, he felt the city's hotels and transportation systems were wholly inadequate, so he got to work. He bought several short line railroads and combined them in 1885 to form the Florida East Coast Railway. He built a railroad bridge over the St. Johns River in 1888, opening up the Atlantic coast of Florida to development. In 1887, Flagler finished construction on 2 luxurious hotels in St. Augustine, the lovely Hotel Ponce de Leon and the ornate Hotel Alcazar. The next year, he purchased the Casa Monaco Hotel, renaming it the Cordova Hotel. He radically altered the appearance of St. Augustine with these hotels, giving it a skyline, and introducing an architectural trend in Florida characterized by the Spanish Renaissance Revival and Moorish Revival styles. Today, St. Augustine is a wonderful place to visit. While you're in town, be sure to visit the historic St. George Street. This pedestrian-only street is immersed in history and oozes with charm. It's lined with amazing restaurants, cute shops, and more. Visit the Leitner Museum, which offers immersive experience of art, architecture, and design from America's Gilded Age. Visit the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum, and the Bridge of Lions with its iconic lion statues. And of course, a trip to St. Augustine would not be complete without a visit to one of its many gourmet restaurants. So there you have it, folks. That's our list of the 10 most charming small towns in America. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to this episode of American Classic Tour TV. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit the red subscribe button that sits just below the bottom right-hand corner of this video, and make sure you ring the bell to get notifications for when we come out with our latest episodes. If you like to travel, like I mentioned, I'm a tour director with American Classic Tours. We offer all-inclusive tours to the most beautiful places in North America. If you'd like our catalog, we'd be happy to send it to you in the mail. To request a catalog, there's a link in the show notes. You can click on that, or you can simply call us at 847-548-3333. That's 847-548-3333. Once again, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'd love to connect with you. Also, please, if you've not done so already, comment below in the comments. We want to hear what your favorite town in America is. We'll see you next time on American Classic Tour TV.